Welcome back to the LinkedIn clone. In this video we'll be working on the user interface for our chat, for our WebSocket connection between the server and the client, between Nest and Angular. Now before we work on the UI, we're going to have to make an API call, build one that returns all of the friends for the logged in user. So we'll just go ahead and create that, and then we'll go style all of this UI here, ready for the next video where we're going to have the ability to create rooms and do some chat. So just to see what we're doing in this one here, we're logged in as user 2 here. We can see we've got the image here, and we can go ahead and chat. Now right now this is just one room, although it looks like we're in a particular room. So we're going to come back and add the logic after we've styled this. Of course you can go to the GitHub repo and copy the styling, but we're going to be adding that API endpoint, and we're also going to be fixing 2 UI bugs relating to this image here not working, and also when you log in as a different type, say like an admin user, and you log out and log in as a regular user or premium user, there was a slight UI glitch there. So we're just going to patch that up a little. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to go and CD into the API folder because we're just going to start there. And then I'm going to navigate into the source folder, into auth, and into the services. And I'm going to go to the user service. And this is where we're able to extend our logic here. And we're going to have a function called getFriends. And it's just going to take the current user. And remember, that's coming from the JWT that's attached with the request, and we got an auth guard there. So that's going to be of the type user. And what we're expecting back there is a list or an array of users. And if we just take a look at the database here, we can see that we've got a bunch of users here. John and John 2 will be the ones I'll be using, and that's a user and admin. We'll see that later on. But more importantly, we have this conversation and conversation users user table. So let's just go ahead and look at the rows here for the conversation. So I've just gone and generated a couple of conversations just ahead of time, and then I'm going to work on this in the next video, but I just needed some data here. If you want, you could just hard code this here. And I've also got this conversations user, and you could go ahead and just hard code this as well if you want. But we're not actually going to be using this part here. What I was more interested in, and we'll get back to this in the next video, but what I was trying to show for the relevance of this video is this request table rather than the conversation table. So we can see that we've got some requests here. So right now we're logged in as user 2, and if we have a look, we look at the user table, we'll see that we've got this ID here of 4. And let's have a look at our accepted request here. Now we see we've got one from 5, but this has been declined. But we've got one from user 1 and one from user 6. And they've both been accepted. And this would, if user 4 created something and then someone else accepted, would also want to be able to show the list of users in that sort of that meet those requirements. So let's just take a look at the UI here. We see that we've got John Pepink here, he's user 1, and John 4, which I believe is actually this user 6 here. So let's just go ahead and create this out. So in Visual Studio Code, we've got this getFriends function being created here. Now what we want to start by doing is we want to access the friends repository relating to that friends table here, and we basically want to, if either the creator or the receiver ID is the user ID that's logged in, we want to, and this is also accepted, we want to get that row, and then we want to return the corresponding data for those lists of users excluding the logged in user. So then we're able to display all of their connections, the accepted friends here, and then later on we're going to go ahead and create a room. So let's just go ahead and start there. Now we're going to use the friend request repository, so we can just say return, and then we can use the from to convert from the promise that the friends request repository will give us into an observable, and then we'll be able to intercept that observable and pipe into it and then switch it and get back our other table based on those bespoke requirements. So what we can do here, what we want to do is basically, we've got two cases here. Either the creator is going to be the current user, and also the status is also accepted, or we're going to have the case where the receiver is the current user and the status is accepted. Again, if we look at the friend request table, the ID of the creator and the status has to be accepted, or the receiver ID and the status of accepted, they both have to be valid and true, and then we'll be able to get our list there. And there's not going to be any doubling up because only one person can create and one person will receive, so there's not going to be a doubling up on that end of things, but we will need to just ignore the current user. So basically that's all we really need, and we just need one more thing here, and that's because the creator and the receiver, they're related to the that's just related to the user table based on the ID. So we can see here, for the creator, the ID 5 here, this relates to John 3 here, and then there's more details on here. So what we could do here, we can just say there's a relationship, and there's a relationship for the creator and then also the receiver. I'm just going to go ahead and copy that in there. So from this observable here, we can just go ahead and we can just pipe into it, and then we can use the switch map operator, and we know this is coming from the friend request repository, so we're going to get the friend request row. And actually we're going to get multiple rows because it's going to find not just one record but all of those that meet the criteria. So we're just going to go ahead and use this type here, the friend request type here, which maps to that table we just saw. So we can have a look there. ID, creator, receiver, status, and then because that refers to the user object and that's another table, we just have those relations relating to that table for the creator and receiver. So what we can do here is essentially what we want to do is we want to have a variable called let user IDs, and it's going to be a number array, and we can just go ahead and initialize it to an empty array. And essentially what we can do is for each of the friends that we get back, So each row in this table here, we can just go ahead and we can just use a for each to loop through each of those records. And for each friend, which is just going to be of the friend request type here, we can just go ahead and have some logic here. So let's just tab over here. So if it's the case where the friend has a creator ID, and that's why we need the relation here, because even though the creator refers to the ID in the table, it's referring to the the foreign key. It's a foreign key, and it needs that join there. So if that creator ID, if that's equal to the current user ID, and the current user ID, this is just going to come from the controller. It's going to be attached with the request. So we can actually go ahead and open that up too. And let's see here, users controller. Let's just scroll down to the bottom. Let's just copy this here, and we're going to want to use a JWT guard. So you won't be able to obviously chat or access that area unless you made it to the JWT guard, and that means you will have your JSON Web Token, and that means from the JSON Web Token there's a user attached to the request. So let's just go ahead and change this to friends/my to get all the friends, and this request object here, that's what we're going to use, and we're going to return a user array, and we can just say get friends and pass in that request object there. And then just here, that's the current user from the request object. So if that current user, if the ID is equal to the this creator ID here, that means they were the ones to create the room, so we only want to have the number in the receiver ID, because we ignore their ID, because we don't need to retrieve themselves when retrieving the friends. So let's go back there and do that. So if it's that case there, let's just open our code block here. We can say the user IDs that we're looking to fetch, we can just go ahead and push the friend.receiver.id. Now hopefully that's clear, and we're going to use the similar sort of logic there in an else if, and you could do an else, but I want to make this more explicit. And if the friend ID, actually else probably wouldn't hold in that case, but you could make it work if you tweaked it a little, but anyway, we're not doing that. If the friend receiver ID is equal to the current user ID, well, in that scenario, that means the receiver ID here, that means we didn't create it, but we received the friend request, and then that means rather than having this receiving ID, we want the creator ID, because that'll be the person that isn't logged in, and that'll be the ID we can use to request the IDs for when we're getting all our friends for all the rooms we'll create. So we can do a similar sort of thing here, where we can just push on this creator ID here. So that's that part there. Now what we can do is we can just go ahead and we can return, and then we can use the other repository that we've previously injected, the user repository. Because we're in this switch map, we can return another observable, and we can just say find by IDs, user IDs. We can go ahead and we can save that. So let's see what's wrong with this. I think there should be one more bracket here. which means this one here isn't needed. So let's go ahead and save that. What's wrong? There's another bracket issue. Okay, so I just added this semicolon here and deleted the comma. So let's go ahead and just save that there. Let's run the npm run start dev. So we've got this endpoint here. It's going to require a token. So we're going to need to log in when the server starts. And then we're going to need to copy that token here. So let's do that. Let's just get a login here. Copy the token. Go to Postman and then just go to the /user/friend/my endpoint. Go to authorization here and click send. And we can see that we get the two users here. So the ID of 4, the ID of 5. So who am I logged in as? I'm logged in as user 1, so john@hotmail.com. Let's look over here. John@hotmail.com has the ID of 1, and he's friends with users 4 and 5 because we got those back there. So let's just confirm that that's working okay by looking at the friend request table. So we can see in the first row that user 5, or the user with the ID of 5, sent a request to us, and also the user with 6 sent a request to us, but that one was declined, and also we created one to the user of 4. So we get the 5 and the 4, and they're the exact users that we want, and then we're going to display the information. We're going to access that endpoint in our front end and then start to build up our UI for our chat rooms. So let's go ahead and work on that now. So the very first thing we want to do is we just want to open up a new terminal here, and we'll just cd into the LinkedIn folder. We're going to navigate to where the chat is, which is nested in home here, in these components here, in this chat folder here. So let's just go ahead and open that up. I'm going to be doing a bit of styling here, so I'll just open up all of those files, and then I'll also open up the corresponding chat service. So let's get that there. So in the chat service, this is where we interface between our API that's running and our client, so we can get the information that we desire. And we can just have a function here called getFriends, and like the other functions, it's going to return an observable, and we're expecting a user array back. And we can just go ahead and we can use the HTTP client by using this HTTP. Actually, we don't have that, so we're going to need to inject that into our constructor here. We can just get the HTTP client from Angular Common Core, Angular Common HTTP. And what we want to do here is we just want a simple get method here, and it's going to return a user array type. Now, it is type inference does sort of imply that, and we wouldn't need to return this statement here. But I just like it for readability purposes. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that there, import that. Let's put a little space here. And what we want to do is we can use the backticks here. And we actually have set up already our environment variables. So recall that we can access that. We can use this template literal here, and we can access the environment variables by bringing in environment. Now I'm just getting the local environment, not production, but if you're doing production, you'll need those production variables there. We're not going to worry about that. It's the same in this case anyway. and then we just access the base API URL, which is, you know, localhost 3000/API, and then we go into the endpoint that we just created, /user/friends/my. So that's what we'll use here. Now we can go ahead and we can close that up. We can also close the controller and that service there from the back end. And now we can come into our chat component here, and this is where we can start to use it. So let's see here. Let's just go ahead and do it in the ng on init here. Now I have been a little lazy with unsubscribing to observables, and we have seen how we can handle that pattern elsewhere in the application. So as an exercise, I'll leave that to you. But one thing to note is the lifecycle methods in Ionic slightly differ to Angular, so you have to check the documentation to see which ones are appropriate. So I'm just going to go ahead and just access the chat service here, get friends, subscribe, get the friends, which is a bunch of users, and this is a method here, this get friends method we just created. Okay. Now this ng on init, I'm just going to remove this return here, and I'll leave this here, this refactor to unsubscribe, and this chat service get friends, subscribe, you get the friends. We're going to need the user model or interface, and then we can just go ahead and we can just set this dot friends equal to friends. Now we're going to have to create that there, so let's just say friends is a user array, and we'll just initialize that to an empty array, and we'll just leave that like that there. And let's just sort of you know, log things here. So let's just do a console log, give it a here, friends, and then we'll just run an Ionic serve just to make sure everything's working okay, and we can see where we're up to with things. So this is the current state of things. I'm logged in as user 2 here, and there's a little bit of an issue with the data updating. So this image, if you just reload this page here, that will address that if there's an image already on, and then also some of these names and stuff like that having issues updating when I've brought in this new when you reload the header in this view. So let's say you're logged in, then go straight to this page here, you get just a slightly unusual behavior. But let's just see the chat here. Remember, this is an actual room, so if you're logged in as another user and you go to this endpoint, these will be emitted to the page. But what our main goal here is just to see that we've got this user here. So yeah, we've got these two users here. That's great. They're the two accounts that we would want to see. So I'm going to start off by building out the UI, and then we're just going to fix some of the bugs relating to the subscriptions in RxJS that are throughout this application. We're not going to implement the pattern everywhere, but we will see a pattern, and if you want, you can implement that throughout the project. It's really good practice to do that. You really should be doing it. I just wanted to focus on all of the different types of features, and rather than do something repetitive and boring. So we're nearing the end of this LinkedIn clone, and let's just start to get the UI going so we can get our chat room going. And if there's anything else, any other cool projects you want me to build, let me know. Happy to have a go at it. So let's just build out the UI. So let's just come here. You see that we've got the friends, that's working okay. You can go ahead and delete that. So let's start to work on this UI here. So, alright, so we've got this margin top of 110 pixels. We've got these messages here, we've got this form here. I'm just going to go ahead and just comment this out. I'm going to refer to it, but I'll just comment it out. So I think what I'll do here is I'll just have an iron card, and I'm going to give it a class of container, and then nested within there I'm going to have a div with a class called select connection, and then within there I'm going to have a div, and I think you can do it this way as well, just the dot top panel, and then within there, actually I'll just build that out there. So we've got a container. So the idea is we've got the two columns. We've got the one on the left where you can click all the users, and then we've got the one on the right where we have the chat. So this container is going to be containing everything. And then we have this select connection here, which is going to be the left hand side. And then we're going to have another div here, which is going to be, it's going to have a class of chat here. And this will also have a top panel. The top panel is just a little bit at the top there. It's about, I don't know, 50 pixels or something like that. Just to separate and give the name to the page sort of thing. But we'll come back to this right hand side. I want to build out this part here. So right at the top, in the top panel, we're just going to have a heading, and the heading is just going to be, we're going to have a div with a class called container, and then nest in there we're going to have an iron text element, and I'll just build that, and then it's going to have a color here of dark, and it's just going to say messaging here. So you can refer to the beginning of the video to see what we're building, and these should start to make sense once I start to save a few of these files here. So, and of course you could copy this from the GitHub repo as well, but if you're interested in how I build it out, you can just watch this video. So after this iron text here, after that div there, we're going to have another div, and we're going to have an iron button, and we're just going to say, give it a shape of, and that needs to be inside the element, give it a shape of round, a color of dark, and a fill of clear, and then I'm going to put an iron icon in here. And I looked at the iron icons in the documentation there, and there's one called ellipsis horizontal outline. Let's just go ahead and save that, see what we're up to. Okay, so we need to have that margin on the top again. So let's get that there. And if we just switch over to our CSS, we go to our container class, which is containing everything. Now the height, I'm going to do a calculation here because I want it to be 100% of the page, but I want it to be not having the footer there, so the header. So just underneath the header, it's about 110 pixels. And then there might be a bit of space there. I'll set the width of this thing to 800 pixels. Now these ion elements that have a bit of box shadow on them, so I'm just going to set this here to none. The border, elsewhere we've done 1 pixel solid E1, 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 that light grey there. We'll say a margin of auto, that'll just center things. And we'll give it a margin top of 110 pixels. And we'll just have a display of flex here. So things are displayed flexible. So we can see we've got this nice box here. We've got this button here. Now we want to split this page into 2 and then have this top part here, and this needs to be in the row. So let's just work on that a little. And I'm also just going to add in this media query while we're here, because it's not going to be 800 on, mobiles that are only, 300, 400, 500 pixels wide or so. So I'm just going to set this max width of 800 pixels here, and the width is just going to be 100% in these circumstances. I'm not going to go crazy into the responsiveness or anything like that. Again, I'll leave that as an exercise to the viewer, but I just wanted to not look completely terrible. So then we have this select connection, which is going to be the left hand side. So let's just go ahead and nest in a select connection into our SCSS here. Now, select connection is going to loop through our all the friends that we get back, and we could have a lot and it will go off the page. So in those circumstances, we'll have this overflow of Y to scroll. And let's just set the width of this left hand side to 40%, and we'll give it a border right of the same thing here. And then for the we've got 2 top panels, so I'm not going to do that nested within. We will have, actually let's just work on the top panel a little bit. So again, this is going to be outside of, it's going to be outside of here, so I can reuse the code. And the first thing we notice is we want it to be in a row, so not in this stacked column sort of format. So the easiest way to do that is just to make it display flex. And we can just go ahead and justify the content to space between, so it will hug the left and right of its container, because we're going to have the 2 nested divs within there. And then we're going to have the align items to center. Now inside the top panel, we're going to have this heading here, and this heading is going to have a padding of 16 pixels, a font size of 18 pixels, and we'll give it a font weight of 500 just to make it a little thicker. And I think we'll just also have a border bottom of this same thing here. So let's save that and see where we're up to. Alright, we can see that we've got this left hand side here. Now we're going to need another icon here. So let's put one in there. And then we'll start to work on the looping of the friends. So if we return to our template here, we can duplicate this iron button here. And we can just say this second button here, there's an icon called Create Outline. And I'm just going to give the first one, I'm just going to do an inline style. And I'm just going to say margin right, -30 pixels. And I'll just bring them a little closer together, because by default they're quite far apart. So we see we've got this nice looking buttons here that aren't too far apart. So let's do the looping, and we'll do that let's see here, I think. So this div here is the top panel, then underneath the top panel, that's where we want to have the friends. So let's give this a class of friend. And this is where we're going to have our ng4. And we're going to let friend of friends. So recall in the TypeScript here, friends is the friends we've set. So we can loop through those. And I'm just going to use an iron grid here. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can have the rows and I can align the avatar image and stuff like that. So I've sort of seen this before. But in the iron grid, I'm going to have an iron row. And in the iron row, I'm going to have 2 iron columns. So let's get those. Oh, it's actually iron coal. Iron coal. So, iron row, we want to have a class here of iron align items center. That's the vertical centering. And then iron justify content center. And you may choose to organize your CSS in a more consistent fashion. I'm just trying to get something up. So you can use the iron classes, you can use CSS, you can use the flexbox, whatever you feel like doing. So in the first iron coal, I'm just going to have this tag here. It's just going to be size equals to auto. And in here, I'm going to have an iron avatar. And that will allow me to have a containing iron image. So the iron image, this will basically, we can have 2 situations here. And I've done this in the ternary approach and in other approaches throughout this. So I might try the if-else sort of approach. So if I have ng if, so if the friend, if you know, if they have an image path, what we'll do is we'll display this code block. So it will basically just be this iron image with the source attribute. And then that's just going to be equal to the, and I can just copy this path from Postman. http:/localhost 3000/API. Now, obviously, if you're doing this for real, you don't want to hard code your links in here like this. You'd put in, environment variables. And I think we've even done that, but I'm just going to keep it like this because it makes it really clear. And then there's this endpoint here, feed/image/ and then this is where we can just plus on something. So we're actually going to need to make this a string. So then we can just plus on the friend.image path. But if that isn't true, we can just do this else and then refer it to a template. And that's just going to be the blank profile picture template. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, and right after this iron image here, I'm going to have an ng template, and you could put this wherever you want. And it's just going to have the tag here, blank profile picture. So it's able to reference this in that particular case. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy this iron image tag again. And rather than have this part here, let's see. We will just say /image/ and there's that one default image, the blank profile picture PNG. So we can just go ahead and get that. And then in this next iron coal here, we can have an iron card title. And this is just going to be the friend that we got. First name, space, last name. And we don't actually have this information in the object, but you might have this for real if you're adding everything in. So I'm just going to hard code the position here to full stack developer. So everyone's going to be full stack developers today. So let's just go ahead and save that. Taking a little while to reload. Okay, so we've got some sort of internal error going on here. And it's because the friend is unable to get the access, but there's also this maximum core stack retrieved in the if else. So let me just have a look at that. So I've just gone ahead and logged in as user 1. There was an error because I deleted some images from the server that's pointing to, but then the big error was just the maximum core stack was just I was just missing, it was just the formatting of this basically. I'll just take a look at that and match it up. It's almost identical. So yeah, we've got that there. Now we just need to, get a little bit of a line here or something like that. And a hover state, so let's get that going. So let's see here. The select connection, it now has the friend class, and we'll give that the border bottom of the 1 pixel solid light grey, and in its hover state we're just going to have a background color here, and it's also going to be this. And again, you could have global variables and all that sort of stuff if you want. I'll also give it a cursor of pointer. So let's just save that, have a quick look at where we're up to. We've got our top panel here. Alright, so this is looking nice. We've got the nice hover state here. So let's begin to work on the right hand side of the card. So as we can see here, we've got this select connection here, and then we've got this chat section here. So we'll have that same top panel sort of thing, and then we'll have our, so let's actually go ahead and just copy that top panel. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this in here. Of course you could put this in its own template if you want to. Again, I'm just going to do it this way. So in the top panel, rather than have the heading, we're going to have a class that says friend, name and role, because it's going to be 2 rows instead of the 1, so it's just going to have a slightly different styling. And here, where we've got this iron text here, I might just give the first one a style here to make the name a little more prominent. Give it a font weight of 500. And this is just going to be whoever we clicked on. And we're going to come back to this. Right now we're just going to hard code it to name, last name. Or maybe... oh, it doesn't really matter. First name, last name. Jeez. First name, last name, and then iron text will have, this will also be hard coded because we don't actually have the value, but we've used this full stack developer to get their role. So then we've got this div here and a div here, iron button right. Now we're going to have this same icon here for the first one, but the second one we're going to just use the video cam. And then that's the end of the iron button, then the end of the div, and we're going to have an iron grid here. It's going to have a class of chat messages. This is where our chat messages are going to be. And we've got the iron grid, so we can use the iron row. And this is where we want the logic that gets our messages. So ng4 message of messages. We can put that on there. And we can also give it a class of those Ionic classes we saw before. So let's just go ahead and get this here. So iron align item center will vertically center, then iron justify content center will do it horizontally. And then we can have an iron coal. Once again, we'll just give it... actually, we can sort of copy this from just above, and that may be an indication that we should be using some templates here. But I'm just going to go ahead and get this iron avatar here. I'm just going to copy this in to this iron coal. And rather than having this ng template thing and this else thing here, I'm basically just going to work on this logic here. So let's see what we have here. We're going to need the image. So I'm just going to leave this blank just for the moment being, but we will I think this was it, blank profile picture. .png. Just copy that there. I'll get that blank profile picture, and I'm just going to put a to-do here. Get image, and we will come back to this in this video. So that's the first iron coal, and then the second iron coal will be nothing more than our message. And we don't have any messages because we haven't sent any, and we're going to need to fix up this bit at the top here. So we can actually, just below this iron grid here, this is where we can have our form, and we sort of started this before. So I'm just going to copy this in here. And then I can delete the comment here. So the form is going to have an iron item with an iron, and we might change this to a text area so it's more space there. Text area. All this is the same, but we can just give it a placeholder now. Write a message. Then we have the iron button. I might actually add some more icons here, so I'm just going to have an iron grid with an iron row, and it's going to have the iron align items center, and also the iron justify content between classes. And in this iron row, we want to have two spans. The first one's going to contain 4 icons. So I can copy this iron button with the iron icon thing in it. So the first one, let's have a look here. I'm also going to have on the iron button this style of margin right of -20 pixels, just because you get a lot of space in these rounded icons here. And the first one we're going to have here is the image outline. So we're going to copy this down 4 times or 3 more times. I'm going to remove the margin right on the last one. And then I'm just going to go ahead and change the name of the icons. So this one can be document outline, film outline, and happy outline. So let's get those. And then in this second span here, we're going to have some more icons here. Now we've got this iron button, we've already created this, so let's just get that one in there. Now we're just going to hard code the width here to 55 pixels. And we're just going to take this block off, and we're just going to send it, have the message send here. Now I'm just going to have one more of these iron buttons below this iron button within this span here. And this one here, it's just going to be ellipsis horizontal outline. And let's just go ahead and save that. I think that's most of the template we need. Alright, so things are looking good. And if we say hi, we get hi, and then we get this blank profile. We'll put in the actual profile. Although this is going to change again in the next video when we get the particular user that talks back to us, sort of thing. I think we're missing an icon here. I'm just going to check that I spelt that okay, and I think it's ellipsis with an I there. So yep, got everything we need in terms of the HTML. So let's just go ahead and style this. Let's go to our template, and in this container we're going to have the chat. Now we made the width 40%, so let's make this width here 60%, so it adds up to 100. We're going to position this relative, and we're making it relative so we can absolutely position the chat to the bottom. And then we've got the chat messages. We're going to have overflow of Y set to scroll. We're going to have the height, and again we're going to do another one of these calculations, so it's going to be 100% of its container. We're just going to subtract off 260 pixels because we're going to have around that for the where we're sending the message and the button down below, and then we can just make it look a little nicer with the border bottom of this 1 pixel solid light grey. So those are the chat messages. So the chat's the whole right container, the chat messages is the messages part, and then also we're going to have the form, which is where we're able to write the new message and submit it. Now this width here, that's just going to be 100%. We give it a height of 200 pixels. Position it absolutely. Right at the bottom there. And we've got this iron text area. And we're just going to give this a height of 110 pixels. And just on this friend, let's see if I can find it. Friend name role. So in chat at the top panel we have the friend name role. Rather than heading, we're just going to need to have the friend name role. It's also going to have padding, but it's going to have a little less padding because there's going to be 2 rows. And to make it have the 2 rows, I'm just going to display flex and have the flex direction as a column. So now we can see things are lined up really nicely. Let's just test that the chat works and the vertical scrolling of that row works. So I'm just going to type in a few things here. And now we can see that, you know, we can scroll down and our chat message box is still there. So that's awesome. We've done all the styling. Now we just need to get in the correct data that we're after. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to need the user image, and for that we're going to need the auth service. So if we just get that in. So auth service, bring that in. And let's just take a look at it for a sec. Remember what we're dealing with here. So we're going to need information about the user, so a logged in user. And the user has various things like the role and the ID and the full name and the image path and all that sort of stuff. And this is what we're interested in for our user, is getting the user full image path. Now obviously if you're logged in on another account, it's going to you know, show you your image instead of their image, sort of thing, if they sent it. But we're going to need this data anyway, and then we're going to, when we create the rooms and all of that, and the messaging will tee that up. But we will go ahead and use this. And just to recall, we have this user variable, and it will either display the profile, the blank profile image if there's no, if they don't have an image, or it will actually go ahead and set the full image path there. And the full image path is like including the local host part, not just the name of the file. So now that we've got that, let's just go ahead and create a variable here. So right at the top here, I'm going to have user full image path. It's going to be a string. And then I'm just going to have this private variable here because we don't need it in the template. It's going to be the user image path subscription. And it's going to be of the type subscription. And what we can do here is in our ng on init, we can go ahead and this is another candidate for when you want to do some refactoring and stuff like that. But in Angular, the regular Angular way, you'd go user image path subscription, and then you just call that auth service, and then you'd get the user full image path, and it's a getter, so you don't need the parentheses. And then you can just go ahead and subscribe to that, and you can just get the full image path, which is a string. And then you can just go ahead and set the user, this user full image path equals to full image path that you get back from over there. And then the pattern is to unsubscribe in the constructor. Oh, not the constructor, the ng on destroy. So you could do something like this. Although, in saying all this, in Ionic they have different, lifecycle methods. So something like this, you just have to check. And I've also used the take one throughout, so you just do unsubscribe. But what I've been doing is, rather than doing this sort of approach, this works in Angular, but rather than doing this approach here, I've been doing the this is ng on destroy. The take one approach. So let's just take a look at this method here. So this particular one's more of a getter, but you can see in some of these other ones where we're taking one. Sometimes this causes some error if you do some logging in and logging out, and we will address that quite shortly. But now that we have the user full image, what I'm able to do is I'm able to go back to the component, and we had a little to do somewhere, and then basically we can just change that here to the user full image path, and that's only in the case that we have it, but we should have it because otherwise it'll just be the default image. So let's get that. So now I'm logged in. You see hey, and notice how it's not having an image, and same with the bar up the top here. But if I, let's see, if I go home and then come back to messaging, and then I say hey, things are working. Now we can see things are working. So we want to obviously fix that, so let's do that. And what I've done previously probably wasn't the best approach, but we can see now and learn from it that in the post service, which gets used on the home page, that's where I was setting it. But the post service isn't used in this messaging tab, so if you just refresh the page here, you won't actually do that. And it's quite simple to fix, really. All you need to do is just cut this little bit of code here out from the post service, and then you just open up the header component, because the header component is going to be on all the pages, so you can just do it there. It's only not in the login section, but that's okay. So let's just go ahead and go to the ng on init, and then up the top here you can say, and you just need to get these going. So we're getting the user image name, otherwise we'll return the blank profile PNG, and then we're just subscribing to that. So you can save that. And now when we reload this page here, we see that we get this displayed here. I just want to go back to the template, because this was supposed to be sort of next to it. So I don't know if something happened there or not. So iron coal. Maybe I don't want that. So I've just slightly tweaked the styling here, and now when you send your messages, it's left aligned. So we can return back to the so we fixed that bug, so let's go and fix the other bug. So I haven't actually shown you this other bug yet, I don't think. But let's say I sign in as john@hotmail.com. Now we're getting this state where we're getting this blank profile image here. If I reload it, then it shows you the image. And also we got this banner here, this blue banner, and that's relating, if you look at the database, if you look at the user, we see they've got this user type. But then if we log in as an admin, for example, we see it's still blue, and we also see that the state here hasn't changed properly. Now this was working out at some stage, and we can see here it's here, the John 2, and the John 2's here, but because we've made some adjustments, we're going to need to refactor that back so it's working again. So what we can do is we can come to the first thing is there was actually a logical error in the banner service. So let's take the example that you were a user and you log in. So you're not an admin and you're not premium. So by default, it's going to take this banner colors, which was set to the default colors. But let's say you were an admin user, then the banner colors is going to be updated to the admin colors, and then you sign out, but it's still going to have that in state. So that means, you know, if you log in as a regular user, you're going to get the wrong banner colors. So basically we actually have to have this next state, this next case here, in the case they're a user. And then we can just have these banner colors here. So that's the first thing. And then we have to go ahead and propagate the changes in our profile summary component. We can close that. But let's open our profile summary component. And this is what we've got so far. So we've got this image path subscription set to the full image path. So let's just go ahead and just cut that and bring it to the top of the ng on init. And we can see got it in the ng on destroy, but I've talked about this before. And then we've got the user role, and that's where we're setting the banner colors to the banner colors. But here we can see that we're using this take one, and same with the user full name, have this take one here. So I'm actually going to use this logic, but I'm just going to take a slightly different approach here. And I'm just going to create a user subscription. So we have a user subscription. And then I'm just going to have something here. It says this.user subscription. And then of course I need to unsubscribe to that. So we'll do that in a similar way, Angular way. So basically what I want to do here is set this to this auth service, and I've actually got the user stream, which is going to have multiple properties on it. So rather than do this multiple times, I can just say subscribe to the user stream. So we're going to get the user. So we're going to need that. And if we have a user and they have a role, this is where we can implement this logic here. Because another thing that could be going on, and this is user role and they'll be defined, is let's say you sign out, right? Well, the user is going to be null in that case, so there's going to be no role there, but it would be in the previous default state. So that's where we're getting issues from logging out and logging back in. So that handles that. And then also we can say, actually after this if, we can have another if. So if there is a user and there's a user first name and a user last name, we can set this dot full name. So recall we got the full name and the full name behavior subject here, which will propagate throughout the application when we call the next one. We can set this equal to the user first name plus an empty string plus the user dot last name. And then we can call this dot full name dot next, and then we can say this equal to this dot full name. And if we just return to our auth service, we have the get user full image path, and we also got this get user full name. So basically, in the scenario that there is no user defined or you signed out, we just want to return an empty, we just want to return null, and then that'll fail the null check. Otherwise, we just go ahead and do exactly that there. And on the user ID, the user role, in the switch map here, we can just say if you have a user and they have a role, and this is basically, I'll just leave a note here for after signed out but still subscribed. And I'll just add one more thing. Now, people aren't going to be signing in and out all the time. They might have, like when you use LinkedIn, you're ideally going to be logged in once and not sign out. But let's say you did have multiple profiles. It's not that big of a deal if you just sort of refresh the page when you log out. You barely even notice it, and it'll just go ahead and help reset the state of things. So when you sign out, you can just go ahead, and this is built in, location.reload. So let's go ahead and save that, see where we're up to with things. Alright, so I'm going to sign out here. I'm going to sign in as user 1. We see we got this, loads of the images nicely. If I go to messages, it has the image there. Hey, reload, go back home, refresh, everything works. And we've got this blue banner here. And now if we sign out, and I sign in as john2@hotmail.com, we see now that we've got this admin view with the gold banner there. We've got John2, we've got the image here. Go to messages, say hey, go home, go back, refresh on the connections page, say hello. So we see that everything's working nicely. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Most of the work was in building the front end with the UI here, but we've also fixed some of the logical errors with some of the subscriptions and RxJS things. Now, I will note that Ionic, it has different lifecycle methods, and you might have to take a slightly different approach. We took more of an Angular approach, and that's more because I'm interested in the logic of building out this chat. So in the next episode, or the next video, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create the ability to join a room, and also we're going to store the messages to a database, and we're going to have the ability to chat between two users, not just on this one server, but in individual rooms between each other. So they'll need to be able to fetch their old posts and then also append new ones, and it'll be like a real-time chat sort of thing. So this was sort of the foundations for that. If you're at all uncomfortable with any of the code, we have covered all of the core concepts throughout this video series. So if you want to refactor things, maybe you want to make some templates, or architect things a little differently, or use the more Ionic approach with the observables and whatnot, please feel free to do that. You can always send me a pull request if it's bothering you or anything like that. But I really want to just wrap up on this project, so I just want to finish out this chat functionality. But yeah, please comment down below if there's something you need to see relating to this, because that's going to be more or less, I think the next video will be the finale in the series. So if you really enjoyed the video and you've been watching so far, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please feel free to recommend any future videos or projects or technologies you want to cover or anything like that. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.